I'd like everybody to have a moment of silence for all the men and women and all the boys and girls who quickly become men and women who are members of the armed services who keep us safe, and then we'll follow with the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, as in our last meeting, I will not forget courtesy of the floor tonight. First of all, roll call. Roll call, Mr. Hanlon, everybody's here. So, open it up for courtesy of the floor. Courtesy of the floor is for any item that is not on the agenda tonight. Please direct all your comments to City Council, and we will try and get you answers if there are questions or if there are comments. Come on up.
Janet Cashel on Wawa Street downtown. We are with Mountainville 30 Crime Watch. We are going to be retiring our post as my husband president, I as secretary, events coordinator, fundraising events, things of that nature. We are not giving up on the city. We are just tired. We're in our 70s and we've been doing it a long time. 4 weeks out of our summer, every year, we lose a week every month. And that's due to fundraising. We're there every day. Now, I told the people I will help, but I will do 1 day a week like everybody else. No more every day. We will help the new administration as to what to do. We will still be the eyes and ears for our police department, who we love dearly. We will still attend meetings and see what's going on. But like I said, we are stepping down after 10 years. Well, we were pretty much 20 years, and we're tired, we're burned out. So.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank both of you for your leadership in Mountainville. You've been there for as long as I can remember, and I think it bodes well for both of you for all the time that you've put in and the membership that you still have, and hopefully they will learn from you and follow in your footsteps. But I want to thank you guys both very much.
We are working on somebody, to take over, so.
Okay.
Just let's hold.
If we can help, if we can help, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. You're welcome.
Anybody else for courtesy of the floor? We'll allow applause for that, yeah. They deserve it.
Jamie Holmes, I'm Double Deck Records at 808 St. John Street. I live in West Allentown. A few months ago, I addressed the City Council concerning City Ordinance 301.03 for secondhand merchandise dealers. I was informed by a few members that this will be looked into, especially Courtney. He's definitely, been talking to me some about it, but nothing's come to fruition yet. And I was recently contacted by the police department, saying that I'm not compliant yet, and I'm really concerned about the fingerprinting and photographing of customers who want to sell me stuff. Many customers have heard about it now, and they say they refuse, so that's going to hurt my business. I expressed this again to Captain Lake from the police department, and he informed me that he heard the same sad story from other business owners. And it's not a sad story; it's the bottom line of my business is people, they feel that it's an invasion of privacy to have their fingerprint taken for, they've never been fingerprinted in their life. I mean, you don't get fingerprinted. You get stopped by the police, you don't get fingerprinted. You don't get fingerprinted, you buy a handgun, you don't get fingerprinted. You don't get fingerprinted for anything. You get fingerprinted when you're arrested for a crime or need a background check.
Yes.
And I feel that, the rest of the ordinance, it's burdensome, but I understand. It's trying to prevent crime. I think a simple driver's license scan would be more than adequate. I mean, if you come in contact with the police department, if you provide them a government issued photo ID, that's all you need to prove your identity. And you don't, use that ID to go on a plane, to enter a federal building, anything else you would need a license for. And I actually spoke to someone who he runs one of the pawn shops in town. They've had this implemented for almost 3 months. And they said in 3 months, they've only had one person that was found in this out of thousands of transactions. And that's at a pawn shop, which buys any type of general merchandise. And I'm very, very specific. And most of my customers are it's obviously their collection, they're downsizing, they're selling stuff for a passed away family member. And I just can't imagine, when grandma comes in to sell her dear departed husband's records, that I have to fingerprint them and make them feel like a criminal just to sell me, a box of easy listening records from the 50s. I'll just have to turn them down because it's not worth the extra work for me, and it doesn't help them any, it doesn't help me any. So, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. I know there's still work going on that ordinance.
Yeah, it's just that I'm starting to get pushed a little bit, and I don't want it to turn into something where now I'm getting fined or something because I'm non-compliant, and I'm not looking to be 100% non-compliant, but, I've had so many customers tell me that I will not be fingerprinted. And I understand, I feel for them, I've never been fingerprinted in my life either, I'm gonna have to now to get a background check, so I can sell used records, which seems crazy, because it's not like a sensitive, job, selling used merchandise, I don't know.
I understand. I know the county and the city are still trying to coordinate.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, in regards to this, the only concern that I have is, and I know you have been working on this very diligently between the city and the county to coordinate on this, but it was my understanding that there was an agreement that for any of the businesses that might be questionable whether they were going to continue to be part of the ordinance after everything was worked out, that they were not going to be forced to purchase any equipment until all of the work that the county and the city were doing was complete and we knew what was going to happen with the ordinance.
That is my understanding also, so I think you still
Okay.
have a little bit of a grace period here, so.
Okay.
All right, that was the main thing I wanted to concern. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
It would be conveyed to you when and if that grace period ends.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's good when your police officer said he's gonna give you a break.
I always gave you a break.
Right. My question is, on the agenda this evening, you're gonna bills are gonna be introduced about $5 million are gonna be needed out of Richmond, out of unapproved balance for help to pay legal fees for LCA. For this arbitration that's going on with Florida Buildings. Do you think the mayor can give us an update on arbitration that's going on? Are we gonna get quarterly billings or are we get monthly billings?
No, okay.
I don't know that I'd call it an arbitration.
First I'll, you're speculating. The $500,000 for LCA, you're saying?
It said on the bottom, top of the LCA bills. It says right on there.
It says to pay for legal fees and settlements that were not budgeted at the time of the 2018 budget.
Wait a minute. If it's on the agenda, we'll deal with it when we get to it on the agenda. Well, this is
Exactly.
courtesy before this is your first time here, come on.
I'm gonna,
Well, I want to leave road, that's why.
What's that?
I want to leave road.
Yes, sir.
Hold it, let's go back to Ms. Hirschman, sorry, Ken. Let's go back to Hirschman, where you go, Lou? Let's go back to Ms. Hirschman. He's saying that the $500,000 is for legal fees and all concerning LCA. No, basically, and Joel talked about a little bit about LCA, I can't say a whole lot about LCA, obviously, at this point, but, the $500,000 is going from account 44 to pay legal fees and something that were not budgeted, okay? And when we get to that, we'll talk about Bill 54. It's being introduced tonight, but the amount of money that the previous administration put in risk management for legal fees, settlements, and the whole bit was severely underestimated. That's why we're introducing Bill 54 tonight. Now, Joe, if you want to specifically, a little bit, talk about 54 and LCA, please do.
Okay, so the original budget that you passed was $300,000 for legal fees. As of the end of June, there was already either expended or owed $435,000. So we need for you to approve at least $135,000 so we can pay the bills as of the end of June. Tom Trout and the solicitor's office got together and they looked at what's pending, and they are giving an estimate of $500,000. And I'm going to tell you that's a little bit hopeful, because if many of the cases that they have start to go to court, the legal fees, it's an asymptotic curve. You go straight up the closer you get to the court date, because the attorneys have to spend so much more time preparing for trial. So they're recommending at this point $500,000.
Okay, thank you.
And when we get to introduction to Bill 54, a lot of it has been explained, but it's not, LCA might be part of it, but not for the whole $500,000, believe me.
Well, we should be able to slide right through Bill 54 then. since
Yeah,
it's
we already answered
explained.
that, we already answered that one. That's what it was.
Anybody else for courtesy of the floor? I'm sorry, Mr. Humphrey.
Sorry, Ken.
Ken Mayor, support Senior St. Cloud, I represent the Allentown Tenant Association as well as the 10th Ward North Neighborhood Association. Actually, thank you to the council for all that they did. They helped inspire us to create the 10th Ward. We never thought about creating a neighborhood group, but it had a lot to do with helping that, maybe not right on it, but making our clubs go there. But first and foremost, we were going down Susquehanna Street, and I'm impressed. I don't know who's responsible for 159 Susquehanna Street, but I can't believe anybody bought that property for $1. Level I saw it today being torn apart and like actually being worked on. That's one of the worst properties in the city. Now we're gonna go to one of the absolute most pathetic properties. Can we not do something about 726 North Penn, which we had called it alone nearly 50 times? 3 times this week, as it's overgrown, garbage everywhere. Once again, the bottom door is busted in. You guys keep coming, the city taxpayers have got to spend an exorbitant amount of money. I cannot believe that that owner is being billed and paying. There's no way I believe it. Because that building has been broken into at least 2 dozen times. There's nothing left. The ceiling, the roof is caving in. Inside the building, you can see from the windows, you can see daylight through the 3rd floor and out into the sky. This is just a massive eyesore, and to all the people that live around it, we gotta look at this day in and day out. It is without doubt the biggest nuisance property in the city, the biggest dumping ground property in the city, because I know we called sweep out there dozens of times. The gentleman who lives directly back of me, who gets to sit on this porch and look at it, has told me he's called it dozens of times. We find any way possible to take this property from this owner, because he obviously does not care. You've heard us for years talk about this one. This one seems to be just lingering on longer than any other now, because the people that actually went in there and bought this 12th Street properties, which were by Candidas, which was more hideous for years, 2 out of 3 have been taken care of. I mean, there's some major eyesores that have been something going on with them, but this one just sits there and nothing happens, but the city having to constantly go out there and clean up. I know that the clean team has been hired several times by the city to clean it up. And they do a good job, only for, it to become, every notice, nobody's there. There's nothing there. So can we please just find something to do with it?
We confirmed a director earlier this evening, and I see him sitting over there, and I know he took notes.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, did you?
Mr. Leitner's on it.
I figured.
Definitely.
Yep, thanks.
Good evening,
Yes,
Mr. President. Don Ringer, 1801 Liberty Street, Allentown. I just wondered what is going on, if anybody can tell me what's going on with the state hospital property.
I don't know that we've gotten a go-ahead from the state yet, have we?
No, we had a preliminary meeting, but there's been no go-ahead from the state. I mean, there's a developer that is interested in the property, and Mr. Robinson, CED, Chair of CED, he was in that meeting. Will you give an update, Mr. Robinson?
Sure. Mr. Ringer, the property is still in negotiation with the state, so they have not reached a final agreement with the developer. They haven't even reached the stage where they'll start holding community meetings to determine if residents on the east side would be okay with what the developer proposes. And last I knew, he had not even finished his preliminary proposal as to what he was going to give to the state and then present to the public. So it's still not in any stage of conveyance.
Well, this developer, I don't think is qualified to develop that.
Well, and
there's
that's-
been questions about this before, and this is the most single important property we have in Allentown.
Well, and that's why, and that is a valid concern for any developer that the state would choose to enter in on this. And I can tell you that if when the state holds the meetings in the community, and I can also tell you that I've committed to both Midway Manor and to the East Allentown Regional Neighborhood Association, that if this property is conveyed, if everything goes that, there will also be an additional meeting that we will hold with Community Economic Development for any type of zoning changes where we would have an informational session. So we haven't even reached the stage yet where the public could make comments like that to the state.
Are we gonna bring in more than one developer, or is this just gonna be this one guy that's not capable?
So what happens is there's two ways that the state can convey property, such as the state hospital. The first way is by bid, so they are obligated under state law to accept the highest bid regardless of usage. So someone could buy it, and if they would get the zoning approval for it, put up 5,000 apartments if they wanted it. The state has no control over usage. The other way is to pick a single developer, but make the transfer of property conditional upon usage. That's what the state did with this particular developer. So quite frankly, if the state feels that the developer can't do the job, or if the pushback from the city and the residents is so great that the state feels that it's not acceptable use, then the state has the option not to convey the property to the developer. Nothing has been conveyed yet. And Mr. Leitner, if I'm not correct on any of those things, please jump in and tell me and correct that. But to my knowledge, at the stage we're at still, the last conversations we've had is that we haven't even reached the stage yet for public comment. No property's been conveyed. It's still in very initial stages.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Mr. Mayor.
I just have one other question for you. Have you paid your parking tickets?
Yes,
I understand you, I
always.
saw a picture of a balloon in your car. That does not look very good for a city council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, hey, answer my question.
I did answer your question,
Did
Mr.
you
Mayor.
pay
I
your
said
tickets?
yes.
Did you pay your tickets?
Yes.
Why have you accumulated so many tickets? Courtney, you seem to want to talk a lot, now you don't talk.
He answered your question, who's next?
I don't think he did, Roger, but.
He said yes.
I'm sure he'll talk before the evening's over about something else.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Who's next?
Hi, I'm Virginia Garcia. This is my husband, Robert Robbins. We are tenants at 126 North 15th Street, apartment 1. We have a son who is Austin Lovely. He has been,
wheelchair bound for the last 4 years, due to a dream failure, which was in 20.
he had a craniopharyngioma, and when it was removed, he suffered bilateral thalamic strokes, which leaves him confined to a wheelchair 24/7. Both Robert and myself work, and we've had to pull him out of school. We tried to get, legally get a ramp built from 15th Street up to our house. Unfortunately, there's not enough frontage for it to be built up to code, and we do not have side access to the house. We are up against West Park. We had went to one of the meetings a few months back. We were on the agenda for West Park Historical Association, I believe it was, and they had bounced some ideas off of us. We went back to the contractors, and they asked us to come and present who we need to speak to gain access to open that back gate up to West Park. Our contractor is willing to put the back gates, two sidewalks joining together, and then a sidewalk to the back, and affix the back gate, the back fence, which is falling down, and put in a gated lock to that gate in order to gain us access, so my son can go out now without being carried on my back, and he can attend school at Allentown, William Allen High School, and be able to go with the nurse to his appointments instead of one of us calling off work, missing work. So does anyone know the answer to that question?
I think Mr. Zuko wants to give an answer here, but we'll go to the mayor then.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Leitner, we're getting a money shot already with Mr. Leitner.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, can I have that address again?
126 North 15th Street, apartment 1, yeah.
All right, you said the back side is towards the West Park.
Yes,
So what we'll have to do is we'll be in touch, but we'll have to talk with your contractor. We'll have to see what the actual drawings are, how much he's encroaching on the park. Also find out if it's West Park, we'll check out the ownership, who's the owner of that. If it's something with the city, we can work something out. If there's another owner that has that parcel piece right there that is affecting yours, we'll have to have some type of conversation with whoever that owner is. But before you leave, I'll give you my card. We'll have to talk with your contractor and make sure we see the drawings, and that from that point, we can work with you to figure something out, okay?
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ed, I used to live across the street from you.
Mr. Leitner will take care of you, I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else for courtesy of the floor?
Hey, Louis Goldsman, 1001 South A Street. Really small issue and hopefully can be easily addressed. At that corner, if you're familiar with, there's a three-way stop sign right next to Jefferson Elementary School. On the southeast corner, there's a bus stop. And the only issue I have is every single day I go home, there is a plethora of trash. So I live right on that corner, on the southwest corner, or southeast corner. And so there's just trash all over the place. There's two trash cans, like city recycling trash cans, on both northwest and northeast corners. And my request is just to get, whether it's the northwest corner or a new trash can, placed at the southeast corner, because that is also where the bus stop is. And so there's no one that really walks or hangs out on those two sides of the corners. But then on my corner, not only are the people hanging out on my stoop, which, you know, whatever, it doesn't bother me, but it's just, that's where all the trash collects, and I get to pick it up. Not a huge deal, and don't expect it to like change tomorrow, but I figured this would be the place to ask.
Talking about moving a trash can from one corner to another?
Yeah, I think we could do that, fellows, no problem.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
That's easy, we'll take care of those.
Hello.
Sir.
The Allentown Hospital is
Your name first.
James Whitney, 1122 Hamilton Street. The Allentown Hospital is basically a character in a movie called Glass that my wife and I are really looking forward to. It's got Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson, and the trailer for that movie is out right now, so you guys should Google it, because it features the most beautiful shot of the hospital that you've ever seen, and it's absolutely really exciting. And then I also wanted to take a moment and acknowledge our men and women in uniform in Allentown who put their lives on the line to protect all of us every single day, day in and day out. I feel horrible for Joseph Santo, who lost his life during an event when maybe he was suffering from mental illness, or maybe it was drug abuse. We don't know yet, and we don't know what was going through the mind of the officer who was forced to shoot him. But you know, there's all these signs in these protests today saying, say his name, and I'm totally willing to say his name, Joseph Santo. He shouldn't have died, he shouldn't have been out there that day. But Carolina Monsanto was 16 years old, and she was in her home, and she was gunned down and shot to death. And our police officers in Allentown are gonna find that guy, and when they find out where he is, they're gonna confront him, and they're gonna put their bodies in front of that man who shoots 16-year-old girls, and they're going to bring him to justice. And I think it's so important to take a moment and realize how precious life is and how brave our men in uniform, our men and women in uniform are for the way that they serve our community. And I think that the APD just does such an amazing job doing that. So I just want to say that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else for courtesy of the floor? Seeing no one. Mr. Hanlon, approval of minutes.
Common consent?
Yes.
Yes.
Old business.
Mr. President, I have something under old business.
Go ahead, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, previously at a committee meeting back in January, actually, with Mr. Greedy's Budget and Finance Committee, One of the things that was discussed at that meeting was the possibility of trying to see about having the budget introduced earlier than the charter stipulated date of November 1st. Now, understanding that we have a number of factors going on, including the pay study and also this being the first budget that your administration is preparing, the question I have for you is, would it be possible or would it be feasible to attempt to introduce the budget even a few days earlier than the November 1st deadline in an attempt to move forwards to that, specifically because your predecessor had a tendency to keep the budget to himself for as long as he could, and in the attempt to be open and transparent, we'd like to try and give the citizens and all of us as much time as possible to look at that document and assemble our questions. Would that be feasible, Mr. Mayor?
The key word being attempt.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that, and I think that that would be a great thing if we could do it even just a few days, and I appreciate you and your staff for making the attempt. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay, anybody else for old business? Seeing nobody on council. All right, we're doing these transfers. Mr. Howard?
Yeah, council approved a number of transfers, and just per the code, we've got a copy of the transfers on the back page. Note that these are transfers you passed, pretty much from November 1st to July 1st. You're not that good, you just have to throw them back there for.
Okay, so we're letting the public know that they're on the back table. Okay. All right, under communications, city council met in an executive session on Thursday, July 15th, 2018, at 5 p.m. with mayor, managing director, members of the IT bureau, including a Mike Shelvin, a consultant from Gartner, to review issues related to the malware attack in the city. Matters of cybersecurity are confidential under both the federal Homeland Security laws and the Pennsylvania State Confidentiality Security Information Protection Law. This matter is not subject to the open meeting requirements under the sunshine. Okay, reports from committee. Budget and Finance, Mr. Garita.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Budget and Finance Committee met last Wednesday. We discussed the finances of the city. We discussed the Account 46, and also we talked a little bit about capital projects. There is a scheduled meeting for tentatively for the 22nd of August, which would not happen on the 22nd. I would not be here. So we have to reschedule that, Mr. Hubbard. That's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garita. Community and Economic Development, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Community Economic Development Committee met last Wednesday as well. We forwarded actually 2 items on the agenda for tonight, and our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for August 15th before the council meeting at 6:45 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. We have Human Resources Administration appointments. Ms. Hoffa.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has not met since the last council meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for August 8th at 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. Parks and Rec, Ms. Moda.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met this evening. We only have one bill in the agenda, but we don't have a scheduled meeting yet.
Thank you very much. Public Safety, Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has not met since the last meeting. The next meeting will be scheduled on August 15th at a time prior to the next council meeting.
Thank you very much. Public Works, Mr. Zuko.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met this evening. We discussed bills 40, 41, and 45, which are forwarded favorably to the full council. Another meeting is not yet scheduled.
Thank you very much. Rules Chambers, Intergovernmental Relations and Strategy. That would be me. We have not met since the last meeting, and we do not have a future meeting scheduled as of now. Now until we get to the most enjoyable part of the evening, the controllers report.
President McLean, I want to tell you that it feels really good to be loved. Thank you.
You can feel it, right?
Yeah. I have 2 reports for council this evening and for the public. Recently, my office completed a study. We looked at the 2017 budget, and we looked at 2 things. We looked at the detailed budget to see if what the departments purchased lined up with what they budgeted. And we also took a look at how the chart of accounts whether that was being used with fidelity or not. This is important for a couple of reasons. The goods and services specified in the budget details should be the result of thoughtful planning to meet departmental goals for the upcoming year. And we wanted the yardstick to determine how well departments estimate their needs. City Council bases its budget approval on the spending priorities listed in the budget detail. Accurate estimates increases council confidence in the budget process. And finally, the budget detail should provide an accurate and transparent window for the public to see how resources are used. So basically what I did is, through the magic of Eden, you can pull up sheets like this for every account, and it lists the vendors that we spend our money on, and I literally went through, every purchase order and invoice and matched it back to the items listed in the detail budget to see how departments did. You can't start doing this until, February, the end of February of the year, because there's some prior year spending going on, and I probably finished up, in July, and it took a little while to write the report. And here's what we determined. I looked at 102 non-personnel related accounts, and we looked at those accounts span 25 programs and 18 bureaus across 8 departments and 3 funds. So I didn't look at everything, but I think I got a pretty good sampling. Here's what I found. Those 102 accounts that we reviewed, 76 accounts purchased less than 90% of the goods and services they budgeted in the detail. Less than 90% of the items that they budgeted. 45 accounts purchased less than 50% of the goods and services they budgeted in the detail. 36 accounts spent less than 50% of their funds on budgeted services. 49 accounts spent less than 75% of their funds on the budgeted goods and services. And 33 accounts spent more than 25% of their funds on goods and services that they didn't even budget for, or they spent money on things out of the wrong account. So the Controller's Office felt that this was a significant deviation from budgeted goods and services to actual spending, and we've determined that there are 4 reasons for this. We recognize the spending priorities change in response to needs unforeseen when the budget was formulated. For example, the mid-year purchase of public official bonds, which we had to do last year. Remember, the public pointed out we needed these, we did it, we needed to do it. There are items that are budgeted yearly but never purchased. For example, memberships and training that are budgeted but never joined or taken. By the same token, and those items are really used as placeholders for budget dollars that are spent on other goods and services. We've also noted item number 3, that there are items purchased every year, but they are never budgeted. For example, Parks and Rec has to spend money every year on music license fees to ASCAP and BMI, and they've been doing that, I'm going to say, for at least 6 or 7 years. And if you go back and you look at the details, those items have never been budgeted. And fourth, we noted that there are items expensed to an improper account. For example, paying for a piece of equipment out of a supply account. We understand emergencies happen and departmental spending priorities need to change in response, and deviation from the budget for this reason is not a problem as long as purchases are expensed from proper accounts. Now, a city budget serves many purposes. Looking forward, it's a planning tool for the coming year as the city sets its goals and determines the best way to deploy its resources to meet those goals. Looking back, it provides a yardstick as to how those resources were used. The second and third reasons that I listed, items budgeted but never purchased and items purchased but not budgeted, show a lack of rigor in the budget process. More emphasis is placed on keeping within dollar amounts available for spending than in determining the goods and services departments need to fulfill their mission. This devalues the budget as a planning and evaluation tool. Expensing purchases to improper accounts, as done in the fourth reason, also negatively affects the budget as an evaluation tool. I have 4 recommendations. The first one really affects you guys, because you vote on the budget, and I did when I was on council, and you, and I know members of the public want to do their due diligence by looking through and understanding the priorities. And like I said, you need to have the confidence that the priorities that are listed are, unless something significant happens to change what we need to do, is how the funds are gonna be used. So I suggest that a process should be instituted for council approval when departmental spending priorities is listed in the budget detail change during the year. When council approves a budget, they approve both the dollar amount of spending and the goods and services those funds are going to purchase. A process is in place for council to approve budget transfers over $5,000. A similar process should be instituted for approval of changes in spending priorities. The limit should be low enough to provide meaningful oversight without being burdensome to the administration. You guys can certainly have at that. Some common sense thing, known expenses should be budgeted and clearly listed in the budget. Conversely, items that are not expected to be purchased shouldn't be included in the budget. Also, consideration should be given to the limited use of contingency funds to provide department some spending flexibility. And standard account definition should be made clearer, and the department should use purchasing as a resource, the purchasing office, if they are unclear as to what account to expense a purchase to. And the controller's request, this recommendation is already in progress. I've had some very good meetings with Mr. Hartzell in the purchasing department, and we've updated some of the definitions. Tawana puts out a PO report every week, every 2 weeks. I go through that report, and if I have a question about what something is expensed to, I send a note to Jessica, we have a back and forth. Sometimes there's a real good reason for why it's expensed to something that I have a question about. Other times she says, you're right, I'll convey that and we'll change the PO. And so, once again, it's important to get the dollars in all the right categories so you can use this as an evaluation tool. I sent the complete report to the clerk, if he hasn't forwarded it to you. I'm happy to make copies available. There's only a little bit of verbiage, and there's a lot of tables where there's an explanation for each account. So, have fun with that.
Mr. President, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
On that point, I think that's a very important point. So are you saying that those transfers for accounts that didn't have anything budgeted to them were never brought to cancel them?
No, this is less a matter of money than a matter of saying, in some department's account, they listed 10 items. But it turns out that they only bought 2 of them. And the money that had been allocated for the other 8 items, they did other things with. That, to me, in the controller's opinion, is a significant change of, departmental mission. And I think, and this is for you and the administration to work out, that if there's gonna be that much of a change in an account, that you guys need to be notified of that. It's happened once or twice. I remember when Mr. Hartzell was new and went behind the ears. Public Works wanted to do some leadership training in their 34 account. And they had the money for it, but it was a change of what they said they were gonna do with the money, and they came back and asked for council's blessing. So that was a very clear way to do it. We understood that their priorities had changed for the year, and agreed to it. And I'm suggesting that a mechanism needs to be worked out where you guys are included when there's a change meets a certain threshold. I don't know what that is, but that's something that should happen.
We can work on that.
Sure.
If that money's not being used, why is it not being turned back in?
Well, in many cases, money is used.
Okay.
But, once again, the department says we're gonna do these 4 trainings, or they do one training that we budgeted, and maybe 2 trainings that they haven't budgeted. Or maybe they just don't do the trainings, and the money's there, and then it does get turned over. Okay, but then my question is, why didn't you do what you said you were gonna do? So,
said it before, but how often does this happen? And also, it's not, I don't wanna throw anybody under the bus, but do you happen to know like which department does, I mean, you don't have to say it right now, but which department does it more than others? And also, how much money are we talking about?
Well, as Mr. Hartzell and the mayor will tell you that in the personnel expenses are the overwhelming majority of the money the city spends. So, off the top of my head, the non-personnel accounts in the general fund might be $12 million, give or take. And if you throw in the enterprise funds and some of the other funds, it might be $1 million or $2 more, it just depends.
How much?
It might be $1 or $2 million more, so maybe we're talking $14 million in total. In non-personnel spending, and non-risk spending also, okay? So we're talking, Cynthia, the accounts we're talking about would be the account 32, which is publications, account 34, which is training, 42, which is when we have a service and maintenance agreement, 46, which is a contract agreement, 54, which is for supplies, or parts, 68, which is supplies, 72 is equipment. Those kinds of accounts, okay? And the premise is, and once again, I looked at 102 of those accounts. I didn't look at every account, and I didn't look at every department. If you want, once again, if you go through this, and you need to go through this with your handy copy of the detailed budget, so you can see what items they purchased, what items they didn't purchase, and how much it was. And there's a handy graphic there to show you. Green is good, yellow not so good. And I'm happy to discuss it with you also, if you have any questions.
Thank you.
The report and the graphs on the report are very easy to understand. They do show the dollar amounts.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer anyone's questions.
Okay, any more? Is that it for you?
Well, I have the weekly check review if you want.
You're on a roll, go for it.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the report's also up the controller's website. I also have the accounts payable weekly check review for June 30th to July 27th, 2018. We reviewed during that time period 503 checks for a little bit over $4 million, 19 wires for $2.3 million. Our findings are, we had 6 wires that were posted to Eden in July of 2018, but the invoices were from February through April of 2018. These invoices were for employee benefits. We also noted that one wire was a duplicate payment, which was stopped before it was released. It was also for employee benefits. HR was advised of the issue and will take precautions to process invoices on a timely basis. Those bills pretty much get paid in a timely manner, but what it really affects is how accurate Eden is in terms of how much money we spend for those accounts. So it's important to do that in a timely manner. We identified 2 invoices where expenses were charged to an incorrect account. The one was taken care of by a budget transfer. The second one, they were going to do a journal entry for it, but then declined to do a journal entry because there were not enough funds in the account to accommodate it, and I referred this issue to the finance director for resolution. We had 3 invoices with late fees totaling $14.40. The bureaus were advised of the issues, and they said they were trying to pay their bills in a more timely manner. And we had 25 invoices that were paid in 60 days or beyond. All the departments were advised of that, all got back to the controller's office and explained their reasoning for that, but once again, they were all advised to try and do this in a more timely manner. And that's my report, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. McLean, if I might make a few comments. Mr. Glazer met with Mr. Hartzell, myself, and Mr. McMahon the other day. It's an excellent report. And we're very grateful that Mr. Glazer took the time. And this report will help us go forth. But I want to stress from the administration's point of view, it's not the mismanagement of funds. It might be a little bit of, details that weren't, we ordered this, but we put it in, but we didn't get that. And I want to emphasize to council and the public, it's not a mismanagement fund. The emphasis is on the proper planning of the funds. And if you put something in your budget, then you should utilize what you put in your budget, not put in your budget, wait 2, 3, 4 months later and say, I'm not going to use that, I'm going to use it on this money. And Mr. Glazer brought that to attention. Administration is very open to it, and you'll see that in the preparation of the 2019 budget. Very good report, Mr. Glazer. I'm very disappointed that some Mr. Hirsch and Mr. Hunsinger, Mr. Horn were not here. We'll get that report to them.
They'll probably read it
I
online.
want three copies, but no, I go back, I'll make a test, but an excellent report, read it, especially the circle graphs.
And I'll make some comments. As someone who had pretty large budgets when I was here with the city, I think what Jeff has done is great, because it helps people pay attention to that. But on the other side, we have to remember that a budget is a planning document, and things change during the year. And I'll be quite honest with you, sometimes people are very optimistic when they put their budgets together, and they actually never get through everything that they think they will the next year. So, and that will contribute to it, but I won't make excuses for some of it in which people just put things in the wrong category.
And that's a matter of just being a little more particular with how you do it. And I was just grateful that he didn't audit 2006 to 2013 in the police budget. And you're right, things do change, because it happened to us many times. All of a sudden, something would come up. One year we had to spend $30,000 to do a new connection that we didn't have budgeted, so we had to take it from somewhere, so, yeah. Mr. Arso.
I will also add to that because of what Mr. Glazer had spoken of coming to agreements on what should go in particular accounts. What should be in account 72, what should be in account 46, that there has been some diversion over time as to similar type purchases that end up in different departments as different categories, different accounts. And because of working with Mr. Glazer, when the budget instructions are going to be going out here very shortly, there's also going to go out a new guideline on a chart of accounts to say that these are the sort of things that should go within this particular category, and if you're going to budget them, you put them in that category going forward. And so as part of budget prep, that standard chart of accounts will be drawn upon.
Thank you very much. Okay, administration report.
Yeah, thank you, President McLean. Very, very happy to announce that the Boys and Girls Club of Allentown is excited to share with you an update about one of our kids, Jeremiah Lyons. Jeremiah Lyons is a member of our local Boys and Girls Club. We're proud to say that Jeremiah is the 2018 Northeast Regional Youth of the Year winner. It was a month ago that Jeremiah won this competition at a $40,000 college scholarship, $10,000 for 4 years. His journey, though, is not yet complete. He is headed to Washington, D.C. on September 21st to compete for the National Youth of the Year Award. If he wins, Jeremiah will represent the 4 million Boys and Girls Club members throughout the nation by serving as a national teen spokesperson. And I met Jeremiah about a month and a half ago. He's a wonderful young man, and he's very proud of the work he does at the Boys and Girls Club in the mentoring program. So we wish him the best on September 21st. Also, on Monday, August 6th, J. Burton Club Stadium will host the 105th anniversary of Romper Day. The Romper Day was started, obviously, was held on August 28th, 1914. And Mr. McLean, I was not there for the first Romper Day. I was there for several of the Romper Days after that. And we're very, very pleased to announce that Romper Day is sponsored by the City of Allentown, the Allentown School District, the Trexler Trust, and the Allentown Rotary Club. Also, last council meeting on July 18th, I noted that the City of Allentown was designated runner-friendly community. Allentown is one of 5 U.S. cities to earn a new runner-friendly community designation for the summer of 2018 from the Road Runners Club of America, the RRCA. Allentown is joined in the class of 2018 by Carrollton, Georgia, Cleveland, Tennessee, Carrollton, Georgia, Cleveland, Tennessee, Georgetown, Texas, and Mesa, Arizona. The runner-friendly community application for this was submitted by the Lehigh Valley Road Runners Club sponsored by board members Neil Novak and Brian Patterson. Along with that is, Mr. Novak, when we did the press release, stated that when we, the Lehigh Valley Roadrunners, first saw the opportunity to apply for the Roadrunners Club of America, the designation of a running friendly community, our first thought was that it was a slam dunk. The Lehigh Valley Roadrunners has had a home in Allentown the past quarter of a century. The places to run in Allentown abound, and a number of years ago, Runner's World magazine named the Lehigh Parkway one of the top 100 places in the U.S. to run. Lehigh Valley Roadrunners, they have sponsored 17 free events per year for the kids. They also have given grants of more than $20,000 to the youth to assist the organization and grants for equipment. And also, the Lehigh Valley Roadrunners has awarded scholarships to young runners seeking higher education for the past 40 years. So it was the Lehigh Valley Roadrunners Club that brought to the attention of the National Roadrunners Club in America to bring Allentown to the forefront, to be maybe one of the 5 cities in the nation, runner-friendly community, and I think we're very proud of that. That's my report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I was only gonna do the Abe Lincoln joke tonight, but, we have some appointments that's after, if we wanna do them all after you.
Yeah, we have 5 appointments tonight, and is it all right with my colleagues that I read all 5 of them and then vote? All right, we'll start with Allentown Housing Authority. That would be Fred Benuelos. His the expiration date for his is 11/5/21. There's Donald Senderwitz, Allentown Housing Authority, expiration 2019. Brian Yoakum, Vacant Property Review Board, expiration 2020. Sharon Lee Glaston for the Arts Commission, expiration 2022. And John Brown Heft, Art Commission. Oh, I'm sorry. James Brown. Jane Brown, Arts Commission, 2022. So is there any comments from my colleagues on these commissions? Seeing none, anybody from the public? Seeing none, Mr. Hamlin, can we have a vote?
Ms. Appa?
Yes.
Mr. Guarini?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Moda?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Zuko?
Yes.
And Mr. McLean.
Yes.
Is anyone here?
Yes,
Mr. Senderwitz.
Mr. Senowitz, anyone else here? Mr. Senowitz, you want to come up and say something?
No.
Okay, no, you coming up?
I saw John Brown Heft today.
I
Said you couldn't make
I
it.
thought it was James Brown.
I'm Donald Senderwitz. I've had to be the chairman of the Housing Authority for the past probably 10 years. And thank you for reappointing me again. That's only a short appointment to 19, but we'll worry about the next one next time around. Is there any questions of what's going on in the Housing Authority, or anybody?
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Community service. Thank you.
I'd just like to say on behalf of Dan, that he actually does a real good job. He knows the system well. He, as he said, he has been there for a while, but he also knows how it works. He has a good pulse on the community, and he knows what, runs good meetings as well, and gives the people an opportunity to speak when they come up from the Housing Authority neighborhood groups.
Thank you.
We went to school together and we were in the same running a meeting class, so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Same high school class.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the appointments. Mr. President?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Hanlon, Bill 36.
Bill 36 amends the equipment fund budget and the general fund budget to provide for a transfer between the funds in the amount of $220,000 for changes to the existing Microsoft Enterprise Agreement as it relates to the numbers.
Comments from my colleague? Comments from the public? Seeing none, Mr. Hanlon.
Mr. Grady?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
I'm gonna vote yes, but I'm still waiting to see what the whole thing, that timeline and the assessment is gonna be. So, but I'll vote yes.
Ms. Moda?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes, but I also am with President McLean about seeing the timeline too.
Mr. Zuko?
Yes.
And Ms. Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. President, 78 and
Thank you very much. Bill 40.
Bill 40 renames the portion of South 4th Street ramp from Union Street to Martin Luther King Drive, Park Explained.
Any comment from my colleagues? From the public? Seeing none, Mr. Hanlon.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Moda?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Zuko?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. Grady?
Yes.
Mr. President, 78 and 2 nays.
Thank you very much. Bill 41, please.
41, and capital fund budget and capital fund budget to apply for supplemental appropriation of $666 as a result of payment for tree damage.
All right, any comment from my colleagues? From the public? Seeing no one. Mr. Hanlon.
Ms. Moda?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Zuko?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. Grady?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
That's 78 and 2 nays.
Thank you very much. Bill 42, please.
Bill 42 amends the general fund budget to apply for supplemental appropriation of $10,660 from the Women's 5K Classic to the city of Allentown to promote breast and cervical cancer screening.
Thank you very much. Any comment from my colleagues?
Thank you, Mr. President. This was in front of the CED committee last week. It was recommended unanimously to be brought forward to the full council, and this is going to be used to supply information into the public concerning breast cancer screenings and other issues about getting checked. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else on council? Anybody from the public? Seeing no one. Mr. Hanlon.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Zuko?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. Greedy?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Moda?
Yes.
Mr. President, 78 and 2 nays.
Thank you very much. Bill 43, please.
This was sort of put on hold for a while. I think they.
It was tabled.
It was tabled,
Oh, okay.
it was tabled 2-0.
All right, then we'll go over that. Bill 44.
Bill 44 amends Part 17, Building and Housing Code by updating the date which the fee will be due and increasing the amount due after the due date from $100 to $105.
Okay, excuse me 1 minute. Sir, you need to remove the sign from council chambers. Thank you. Okay, any comments from council?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This also was in front of the CED committee last Wednesday. It was forwarded favorably 2-1, excuse me. We had a vigorous debate about this with Mr. Greedy and with Mr. Leitner. I will just say for my part that I believe that this is a reasonable increase in the fee, and I would ask all of my colleagues to vote for it. The ordinance that establishes the rental fee, to have rental units, also establishes the procedures that community economic development must follow if someone does not pay on time. So we are going to be paying to execute the late notices, whether we increase the fee or not. So it's a question of, would we rather that the taxpayers pay for this, or the landlords who are late with their fees pay for their own issues because they created it. Also, this bill will change the time when the fee is due from April 30th right now to December 31st, and will make it more in line with the fact that the permit itself is a calendar year permit. So instead of asking people to pay that 4 or 5 months into the year, we're now asking them to pay it before the year begins. And I would again recommend my colleagues to vote favorably for this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from council?
Just, I did have a vigorous disagreement with how the bill was going to change about 75% of it into a late fee. So the bill actually right now is $75, so late fee will be $25, and what the proposed change is to increase it to $50, as Mr. Robinson said. However, I thought that it would be better if we say, if you're late, you pay $25, and if you don't pay within the late fee, then after 30 days, you get another $25. If you don't pay it after another 30 days, then another $25. I think it provides, I think for me personally, I think it just excessive to increase a late fee of any amount so high at once. From you increasing it 75%. I never seen anything like that in my time here. So that's, and I actually had a conversation with Mr. Mavan about it, and I don't know if they had a conversation with Mr. Lanier about it. So that's what I'm at.
Is that a motion to amend the bill?
I'll make a motion to amend the bill. That's okay.
And Mr. Hanlon, you have the exact motion?
I don't have the exact motion.
Neither did I, that's why I asked you.
So the motion will be that you have the bill, you increase the fee, $25, and after 30 days, if they don't pay it, well, actually, you keep it at $25, okay? And after 30 days, they don't pay it, you increase another $25. And if they don't pay after that, then $25 subsequently. As opposed to having it $50 change on months. I've never had anything like that.
Okay, so you're gonna do $325.
Well, you can do two $25 if that's what you want. That's what the administration wants. I think they want to increase it $50. And I'm not sure why, if it is because they want money, or I'm not sure why. I'm looking out for them.
Mr. President, could we get a clear indication of what the motion is, when Mr. Hanlon has it? Could he read it back to us? Because I'm confused here.
Well, I think right now we're debating whether or not it's two $25 penalties or three.
Yeah.
And I think you.
It's real simple, Mr. Robinson. $25 is what it is now. You understand that? After 30 days, if they don't pay it, another $25. You understand that, right? That's very simple. That's all.
There were others confused.
Yes, it was not just me, Mr. President, contrary to what you think.
I guess first of all.
I know you, go ahead.
First of all, no, wait a minute. First of all, we need a second for the motion before we start discussing it.
I would like to second it, because I would like more, yes, second, I would second.
Okay, we have a second, so now we can discuss the motion. I guess let's turn it over to the administration and do an explanation here.
Yeah, and Julio and I had a discussion, and I honestly, after the last meeting, I was trying to figure out what they were talking about. My assumption was that's what the bill was, and the bill is not that. It is the $50 upon being late. And Leonard had spoken to them last week, and basically said that's what it cost them to issue the late notices. So if you don't increase it to that, then, as someone alluded to, is you want the taxpayer to pay for it, or a portion of it, or do you want the landlord to pay the full rate? That's what it comes down to, from what Leonard has invested.
And if I
Can I
can
just
interject,
interject for a second? So if that is the bill, okay, and I told her that's what it was. How about they don't pay it within 10 days? What happens?
That's my point exactly. Right now, you have 4 months. 4 months. If we, the way it's set up right now, we give you 4 months, and we're not looking at doing anything different except change the billing date from September. We're gonna send the bill in September, and it'd be due 12/31. 4 months to pay a bill. That's beyond any other lending company, credit card company. We're giving you 4 months notice to pay the bill. And then what you're proposing is after you're late, after 12/31, you're saying that you want us to then bill $25 30 days later.
No, you didn't, you just brought that up, that you're gonna change it to 12/31. I thought that it was
No,
gonna
that
end
was,
April.
yeah, last
I thought it was gonna stay in April 30th.
No, it's,
Okay.
September is when the bill goes out. The first bill goes out September. You have until 12/31 to pay your bill, your rental registration fee, by 12/31. Once January 1 comes, you're delinquent, you're late. All right, so right now, the way it's set up is $75. If you're past due, now your bill will be $100. That's the way it's currently set up. So in essence, yes, you're right, it's going up 50, but only if you're delinquent. But what we're doing is saying, it's still $100, but now we're saying if you're delinquent, now it's $125. But I think 4 months is a reasonable amount of time for someone to pay their rental registration. And again, we're going back to, if they don't pay, we have to go back, scrub the system, pull all the bills again, rebill. And right now, again, 21% of the people are not paying on time. And you're asking us to do, again, give them another 30-day grace period to pay $25. I'm not following.
No, let me just get this right, because I think there was a lot of confusion. I thought you were gonna keep the bill, send the bill in January and keep it until April. So now you're saying you're gonna send it on September, okay? And you're gonna give them still 3 months to pay by December 31st, is what you're saying? Okay. And if they don't pay by December 31st, 4 months. So if they don't pay by December 31st, it will be $50. That's what you're saying?
It would be $125, yes.
So 75.
But you're still increasing the late fee.
$25.
$25. I mean, an extra $25.
Yes. Upon receipt.
So, how about the?
But if the late fee doesn't get paid, where do we go from there?
Yes.
And then that's when we follow the ordinance, and if they don't pay that, and then we go out like we normally do, we're going out, we're sending inspectors out, we're tagging the property, we're going to do the revocation process. That's the way the ordinance is written right now.
You know, since that, and I'm not opposed to what you're saying, not right now, but saying that, I spoke to various people, and I'm gonna give you names, but some of them didn't even know about the bill. And probably that's why you get people who don't pay it. You got it, I mean, we gotta do some kind of, I would say, some kind of media relations that allow the people, to tell the people that this is coming.
But when they come in, they register their property, that they are a landlord. How do they not know that there's a bill due? You're registered as a rental registration property. There's no
Let me just say to you, and you probably know this, there are people who don't have a property registered out there.
Which we're working on, and we're going after them.
And I'm renting.
And we're going after them. As soon as we find them, we go after them.
Okay. And I'm not, vouching for them, then you should be paying like everybody else. I agree.
Absolutely.
I think we have to just let people know that that's what's going on.
Okay, it's up to you all, but again, I said, they have 4 months. If you can't pay your bill in 4 months.
Well, that's like taxes. People have 4 months to pay it. We get our tax bill in January, and they're doing the same in April. And some people don't pay in April, they give them a graduation to pay. Some people can pay for statements.
Just like you said.
We're talking $75 here, we're not talking a tax bill.
I just, look, obviously, it sounds like the majority is in agreement to it. I just think that raising any fees, especially a fee that is, I think, not working properly, to say it clearly, to raising any fee 75% of what the total bill is excessive. But you obviously gonna get it passed. I just think it's excessive to raise any fees that much.
I have a question. Why are we not pulling their licenses if they're not paying?
Well, again, that's part of the process, and that's why we're trying to bill ahead. Because right now, we're billing in the same year. So in essence, you're already renting a property, your property's registered, you're already renting in the current year. So that's why I'm moving it back so that we'll get our money and we'll know who all is registered by the end of the year for the upcoming year. So then at that point, you can't revoke something that is never given.
So I understand that, but if 21% of the people are not paying now, what makes you think they're gonna start paying all of a sudden?
Again, this is more of a process of trying to get compliance. In conjunction with utilizing the ordinance, in conjunction with sending inspectors out, tagging the property, sending a late notice. And remember, that's why I'm asking for the increase, is because it's labor intensive for, once we send the bill out, again, like I told you guys last week, there's 4 different departments involved with sending the bill out. Now that they're delinquent, I gotta go through those same 4 different departments again to send out delinquent bills for 21% of the people that aren't paying. So again, utilizing the enforcement of the code, sending the building inspectors out, sending another notice, we're doing everything we can within our power to try to gain compliance.
Okay, I understand that, but what's the deterrent from not paying?
We can post the property and revoke, do the revocation
How long does
process.
that process take, say, from January 1st?
It depends on how many, if you're talking to.
You already gave them 4 months.
Right. And so say, for instance, the 21% that didn't pay.
Right.
So starting January, now I'm gonna take my inspectors that are all systematic inspections to go around and start tagging 2,000 properties. On top of that, we can revoke it, we do a revocation process to reinstate. That hopefully will be the deterrent, because in order to reinstate, that's a $500 fee. So hopefully that will be the deterrent for people to pay instead of getting their license revocated.
It seems like the system needs to be revamped, because the system that's there now obviously is not working.
Which is what we're working on. That's what we're trying to do.
And if you think about it, if you pass this bill, you add additional revenues to their budget so they can actually build the infrastructure to do this properly.
I need to simplify this a little bit.
Okay.
What we're voting on tonight, or what we're going to vote on tonight, I think is very simple. This is all about late notices. This is nothing more than the fact that when you're sending these late notices out, it costs us money. So what you're asking is us to vote to raise this so you can justify and add the money to send the notices out. Whether they're gonna be evicted, whether they can't pay it in 4 months, that's not what we're voting on. We're voting on, can you afford to send these notices out without being in debt? Is it costing the city money? With us raising this, it wipes out that debt. It's gonna cost us money for this, and this is the only thing we're supposed to be voting on, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, that's all I need.
And I think what he's trying to do is to have the delinquent landlords.
Yes. Pay for it, yes, right, rather than us.
Right, rather than
Yes.
us, who have nothing to do with it, so.
So, Mr. Bennett, I have some questions for Mr. Leitner on the amendment.
Okay, then hang on one second, sure, let's go over here first.
I'd like to see the cost of this. I mean, I'd like to see some kind of financial, financial statement, financial, what's the word? Breakdown, sorry, thank you. That will give us how much it actually costs to do this. Because if that's the case, then we should raise every fee that people don't pay an extra $25 or whatever it is. Because it doesn't make sense to do one, I mean, we spend that up.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Green.
I make a motion.
What we're dealing with here.
I wanna have the information first. And once I have the information, we can make a determination, because our city should actually be self-sufficient to what we're providing. So if it costs us $100, I mean, remember, that number was just brought up when we first passed this bill, the initial bill, a long time ago. It used to be $35, okay? Used to be, in fact, used to be $15. It went up to 35, and from 35, the mayor just brought it one day and said, it's 75. We brought it up to 75, and that's what it's at.
But if I could interject though, you're talking about the registration. What we're concerned about is the delinquency. I'm not here to change the rental registration fee. I'm here to deal with delinquency. Anybody that's delinquency, that's delinquent, Again, the taxpayers are paying that, why are they not held responsible for paying it? The other process I'm looking at is just, again, the cost that 4 departments, IT gets involved, Treasury gets involved, code enforcement gets involved. I mean, you're looking at all these different departments, printing shop gets involved, all these different departments to print a bill for people that are doing it.
Listen, I got you.
Postage,
I got you.
tagging.
I got you. What I'm saying is, I have been here 17 years, I never seen such an increase at one time, any bill that was sent, in a percentage wise.
So what would you recommend?
We
No, I just say what it is.
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear, okay, let's go over to Mr. Robbins.
Actually, thank you, Mr. President.
Why not table it then?
Well, first of all, before we do anything, we have an amendment that we have to vote on. So concerning Mr. Garidi's amendment, Mr. Ledger, the entire purpose of what you and your staff have done the research on, what you presented to us last week, was that you calculated out what the costs were dealing with. If I remember correctly, you said it was roughly 2,300 different properties that pay late or aren't paying or anything to that effect. So you calculated out what the costs were dealing with the 4 different departments, and most importantly, following the law, having to send out your inspectors, which the hourly rate is rather large. We're taking them off of their job of doing the actual rental inspections, so we want to try and avoid that. So we're now, if this amendment passes, we're now adding an extra layer of, for lack of a better phrase, bureaucracy to what you're trying to do. This would actually insert, from what you're saying with your cost study, an extra cost, because now you're going to have to, instead of sending out 1 late notice, now you're going to have to send out 2 late notices.
Based off the amendment, if I'm understanding it correctly, you said a $25, then another $25, then another $25. So yes.
Well, I think it was only 2, so it was the initial $25 fee, then at a month later.
I withdraw my
second.
amendment, so we can move this forward. I withdraw my amendment, okay?
Thank you, very good. Amendment's withdrawn, now we can vote on the bill. Any? No, we never got to the public, I'm sorry, anything from the public?
Kind of between Downtown Tennis Association. The one thing, so nobody ever analyzed this before this? Because we're jumping, as 3 separate people say, you know, we're gonna get the landlord to pay this, not the citizens. No, you're going to get the renters to pay it, not the landlord. We pass it all on, so I hope from here on forward, I know this sounds like it's gonna pass, but it is what it is. From here on forward, when we consider these things against the landlords, unfortunately, we need to consider the 33% of the population that lives at or below poverty. 25 does seem a bit excessive, I mean, to send a bill, but how about email? Probably, cut out the printing department and just not the IT department, so we're not email these people? A bill, I mean.
I think there's certain requirements, and I don't think
Okay.
email comes with a requirement.
That's fine.
But thanks. Anybody else from the public? Seeing nobody, Mr. Hanlon.
Okay, so this is on the original bill, and the original bill changes the due date to December 31st, and then it raises the late fee by $25 from 100 to 2,500. Okay? Mr. Zuko?
No, sorry, 100, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Ms. Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. Grady?
No.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Moda?
No.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. President, 5 yeas and nays.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Bill 45, please.
Bill 45. Men's solid waste fund budget, and stormwater fund budget for a total combined supplemental appropriation of $33,911. Zappa?
Yes.
Sabrina?
Yes.
Hendricks?
Yes.
Moda?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Zuko?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Our resolutions for final passage are 92, please.
R92, authorized submission of an application to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for a grant of $1,350,577.
from my colleagues.
I have two questions, Mr. President. I'm sorry.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. First question is, have we already applied for multimodal funding, Mr. Leitner? I think, didn't we apply for another grant for phase 3 of the American Parkway project?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Is there a concern that we have two grants that might compete against each other?
No, because we actually already talked with PADCD, and they're aware that it's coming.
Okay, great, thank you. And then the second question I have is, what's the breakdown of the work that you wanted to do on the block itself? And also, a rough, if you don't have this, you can get this to me later, a rough costing of it. Like, are we talking about X number of dollars for the replacing of the sidewalks, X number of dollars for the curbing, X number of dollars for lighting? I'm just curious what the cost breakdown was. You always have everything I ask for, Mr. Leitner, I enjoy that.
It's a complete breakdown here. I mean, if you like, I can show it to you.
I mean, yeah, you could, I'm just curious about it, so, for that, just because it's, with one block, there's a lot of work to be done there, so I was curious what the breakdown of the work was. Thank you, Mr. Leitner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, anything else from council?
You good? Oh, yeah.
Anybody from the public? Seeing nobody, Mr. Hanlon.
Okay, on the grant application, Ms. Zappa?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Ms. Lorna?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Dugal?
Yes.
Mr. Leitner?
Yes. Okay, ordinance for introduction, Bill 46, please.
R46 amends the general fund budget by deleting the clerk read position in Bureau of Health and creating a community health specialist. Spanish is required, allocated 12 hours.
Okay, that'll go to CEDC, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Bill 47.
47 amends the 2018 general fund budget for supplemental appropriation of $2,525.85 as a result of a reimbursement from the Pennsylvania Emergency Medical Services Council.
Public Safety, Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Bill 48.
48 amends the general fund budget to accommodate position changes in the Department of Finance.
Bureau of Accounting and
I was reading this right.
You would do this.
Bureau of Accounting. Eliminating the position of Deputy Finance Director and Treasury and reinstating the Treasury and Accounting Manager position.
Okay, Mr. Greedy, Budget and Finance.
Thank you very much.
Bill 49.
49 amends the 2018 general fund budget, deleting the position of Deputy Director, and in a 21 end, budgeted salary of $103,350, and adding the position of Director, 21A, an annual salary of $107,500.
Ms. Affa.
Yes.
Bill 50.
Establishes Article 7.12 titled Consumer Fireworks, placing restrictions and regulations on fireworks between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Bill 51.
51, next, the general fund budget, general fund cash balance, and the 2017 capital fund cash balance to provide for a transfer of cash as directed by the city's auditors from Zelikowski Axelrod LLC to correct the negative cash balance in the capital fund.
Mr. Greedy.
Thank you very much.
Bill 52.
Bill 52 amends the 2018 general fund budget, the 2018 risk management fund budget, to provide for a transfer to the 2018 capital fund budget for repairs to the road and parking lot at the police academy.
Mr. Zuko.
Thank you, sir.
Bill 53.
Bill 53 amends 2018 general fund budget by increasing the salary of the community development director by $5,278.
Ms. Affa, that will go to you.
Yes.
After tonight. Bill 54, please.
Bill 54 amends the 2018 risk management fund budget by transferring $500,000 from the unappropriated balance into account 44 to pay for legal fees and and settlements that were not budgeted at the time the 2018 budget was prepared.
Masafa. Resolutions for introduction, we have none. Any new business?
Mr. President, the agenda has ordinances for introduction to be referred to committee with public comment prior to referral. It's just an opportunity.
Okay.
An opportunity for public comment.
Any public comment on any of the ordinances we just referred to committees? Seeing nobody. All right, resolutions for introduction, there are none. New business? Seeing none. Good and welfare? Seeing none, do I have a motion for adjournment? Okay, we're adjourned.